Annunciation Radio presents Say Yes to Life with Peter Range, Senior Fellow for Strategic Initiatives at the Center for Christian Virtue.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Say Yes to Life, where we learn to embrace our Catholic faith in the secular world. I'm your host, Peter Range, Senior Fellow for the Center for Christian Virtue, and welcome to show number 461 as we continue to fight for every single human life, born, preborn, and yours in our world today. On today's show, I'm tremendously excited to welcome Marie Mazzanti. Marie is a stay-at-home mom of 5 children who she homeschools and creates faith-centered content online at her Instagram page, Marie Mazzanti. She's married to a Protestant, and together they're raising their family in the Catholic faith, navigating real-life ecumenical conversations with honesty and grace. Marie has been involved in the pro-life movement since the age of 11, including sidewalk counseling in college, serving on multiple pro-life committees, teaching birth and parenting classes at local crisis pregnancy centers, and helping raise funds to support pro-life ministries. She's passionate about supporting women, strengthening families, and saying yes to life in all its stages. Marie and I are going to be talking about her life, her incredible Instagram account with over 150,000 followers. I think I have 30 myself, so that's quite impressive. But she's promoting life in the Catholic faith. So we'll be talking about all of that in just a second. But first, let's go ahead and take 180 seconds around Ohio and the nation to talk about what's happening in the pro-life movement and the news. First, pro-life laws do indeed save lives from Life News. In a powerful affirmation of Florida's commitment to protecting the unborn, new state data shows that abortions performed in Florida's clinics have plummeted by almost half since the implementation of the state's 6-week heartbeat protection law. According to the Tampa Bay Times, utilizing data from the Agency for Healthcare Administration, just over 44,000 abortions were provided by Florida clinics last year, the fewest for more than a decade, and a 46% drop from 2022, when more than 82,000 terminations were recorded. Now, this is certainly a cause for celebration, but must be tempered by what we know is the availability of the abortion pill through online purchases, which is one more reason why we need the Trump administration to take action immediately to return common sense restrictions, such as a doctor's visit to receive the abortion pill. While we want the pill completely banned, the fact the Trump administration has not taken this action already remains troublesome, to say the least. All right, secondly, updates from my alma mater, the University of Notre Dame. 2 esteemed scholars have resigned their affiliations with the University of Notre Dame's Liao Institute for Asia and Asian Studies in protest over the appointment of pro-abortion advocate Susan Osterman as its new director. That's Robert Gemello, a research professor emeritus of theology and an expert in Buddhism who serves as an emeritus fellow for the Liao Institute, and Diane Deserto, a professor of law and global affairs who was a fellow. Gemello, in a statement, described continued association with the unit led by Osterman as, quote, simply unconscionable, this regardless of whatever considerable talents and accomplishments the appointee might otherwise bring to the job. Kudos to both these professors, and I hope more will follow suit. A Catholic university should not become a sounding board in any way, shape, or form for those who promote intrinsic evils. All right, third and finally, mark your calendars. The Center for Christian Virtue Spring Gala is April 11th in Columbus with CNN commentator, and don't worry, he is conservative, but CNN's commentator Scott Jennings, who will be our featured speaker. You can find more information at ccv.org. Secondly, you can also go to essentialsummit.org to learn more about our Essential Summit in Columbus, which this year is Friday, October 23rd, giving us a little breathing room from our March for Life, which is Friday, October 2nd in Columbus. All right, folks, now it's time for Marie Mazzanti, stay-at-home mom of 5 children who runs an Instagram account with faith-based content, which reaches over 150,000 followers. Marie, welcome to Say Yes to Life.
Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, tremendous joy. And I wonder if we could just kind of start with your story. Where did you grow up? And can you tell us a little bit about your family and faith journey?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in the greatest state in the US, which is Texas. I've lived all over Texas, Dallas, Houston, Austin. I grew up in a family with a Credo Catholic Italian heritage dad and a Southern Baptist background mother who converted to Catholicism. And so there was a beautiful blend there that shaped me. I am married, as you said, to a wonderful Christ-loving Protestant man, and basically a lot of what has shaped me has been this sort of ecumenical journey that I've seen in my life through a lot of my relationships, whether that be my parents or my godparents, my aunt and my uncle, who he converted at the age of 55. And most of my aunts. So there's this beautiful walk that I've seen personally, just being able to love people and understand that these all develop from relationships. Like that's how we bring people over to the faith in general. And so I think that's ultimately what has shaped a lot of what I've done and who I am.
That's beautiful. How did you meet your husband? And was it love at first sight, or did he have to win you over a little bit?
I met him at we were both Aggies, Whoop at Texas A&M, and it was a complicated journey. I think I talk a lot about it on my Instagram. That the gentleman that I was dating before my husband actually is a priest now. So that's so we can kind of see this element of where if we trust God and we keep a close relationship with him, that sometimes he can lead us in ways that we would never have gone. That I think that shows in both with my friend who became a priest, and then marrying my husband, who I never thought I would marry someone who wasn't Catholic. But again, when I think that when we bring God into our discernment on every decision we make, as my mom always said growing up, that he cares about every single hair on your head. So, whether it be a move, whether it be a job, whether it be your boyfriend, whether it be, anything, that I think it's always great to bring the Lord in on that decision.
Well, I haven't seen that story yet, so I'm gonna have to go back to your Instagram account to see the story of the former boyfriend becoming a priest. That's quite exciting, but and I'm sure quite interesting as well. But you do have 151,000 followers on Instagram, and it's all kind of Catholic content. You do such a great job with it. What was the impetus for going to Instagram of all places to share the good news?
Yeah, thank you. Oh man, it was kind of this, I mean, divine prompting, right? If it's like the biggest catalyst. So I started where I had a Catholic therapist, and she gave me some homework, which was to attend weekly Eucharistic adoration before our sessions. And in this process, it was wasn't quick, it was long. And I kind of was just continuing to do it where I knew that something good would come from it. So 30 minutes went to an hour, went to me kind of witnessing these beautiful elderly veiled women every day around noon that I consistently saw. So I was like, well, y'all obviously aren't getting homework for this. You're doing this because you love what's in front of you. And so, in one instance, there was a woman that was prostrating herself before the monstrance, and just yeah, I spent an hour just staring at her, and so many thoughts went through my head of questioning it, of understanding it, and eventually, I came to a place where I was moved and thought, "What is in front of me? What is this woman doing?" She doesn't care if it's embarrassing. She is honoring her Lord that is in front of her, and so um, my heart opened, and it kind of moved my faith from my head to my heart, and brought me lots of joy. And so from there, I think I was very on fire. And so that encounter really brought a lot of me wanting to share my joy with other people. And as a stay-at-home mom, I have limited reach, just the grocery store cashiers. And I had converted all of them. I'm just kidding. But God was pushing me to kind of go into the digital jungle, which is interesting because I hated social media. And so I pushed it off for a really long time, and I thought, "What? This is insane. Why would you ever put me there? It's such a Sodom and Gomorrah place." And I kinda came to the conclusion after praying in adoration, social media isn't going away. It's a mission field that needs light. And I saw gaps. I saw a gap and a need for kind, thoughtful Catholic teaching and support for interfaith marriages, whether through conversion or reversion or a joyful choice like mine. And so one of the things that I had a goal of was to continuously bring that beauty and that love from the Catholic faith, where people can see that you can encourage a charitable dialogue and offer hope and clarity to people.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, it's something I struggle with a lot with my own kind of social media channels that which have much less reach. But my wife and I talk a lot about the fact that it is such a place that it's in many ways has kind of divided us, I think, as a society and culture. But I love how your call to Instagram, it was really born of prayer, and it's born of a place of, look, it's a place where so many people are at. We have to kind of use that medium to share the gospel as best we can. So appreciate your answer there. I don't know if you've ever read The Unaborted Socrates by Dr. Peter Kraft. It's a tremendous book. I actually shared it with an abortion doctor one time. Oh, you have the book, actually. Fantastic. So,
Yes.
but, they use the Socratic method in the book to kind of ask questions to help the reader discover the truth behind abortion. In your videos, you do a lot of dialogue between each of the two sides, and both sides are you, just wearing maybe different outfits on that particular day.
Always arguing with myself,
Yeah, yeah, very much my inner dialogue with basically every decision I make. But
Right.
whether it's the issue of abortion or it's immigration or otherwise, that's kind of your approach, this back and forth. Does it have anything to do with the Socratic method, or is that something that you just kind of came up with? This would be a neat way to kind of approach these issues.
Yeah, it's so funny when you told me about the unaborted Socrates in our emails, because I was laughing. I mean, I've had this book. It's probably one of the first books that I just kept rereading early on in my pro-life career. And as you witness people, especially in college, where you're going to be interacting with people at parties that unexpectedly are like, "Oh, this chick wants to talk about abortion at this party." So, and so I needed to be able to kind of logic through talking to a bunch of different kind of people. It's an emotional topic, but I love it. The book is so great. People, if you have never read it, get it. It's short, it's dense. Peter Kreeft is just chef's kiss. And so when you can kind of hone in on a very emotional topic, and you can take logic and reason in it, I think it really helps bring down the anxiety level I think that most people feel when talking about difficult issues. But I didn't actually consciously copy Kreeft. It is definitely a similar spirit. I actually came from my conversations with my husband, who is just like a self-described stoic, and he absolutely is. He's very into philosophy. And so in our conversations, he's just very loving and humble and open, and he always gives me a safe space to discuss difficult topics, whether that be from when early on in college when we were discussing abortion, to contraception when we were discerning marriage, something that I think a lot of our Protestant brothers and sisters don't fully understand. But again, I never felt like I was in a situation where I was having to get really defensive. It was always like, let's understand this together. We're on the same side. Let's solve this problem together, instead of like coming at each other head on. So not everyone has that. And so I wanted that model to be charitable and truthful dialogue. So since this works so well for my husband and I my goal was to show people, because I think that a majority of my messages I get from interfaith couples, or even someone that has a friend, they just don't know what to say. They may know the truth of it. They may know the catechism. They may know the facts about abortion, but sometimes it's difficult to get the words out that sound they will be received well. And
Yeah.
so I think that was my goal, was that once I realized that it actually helps reduce anxieties around this topic, to give a visualization of an honest exchange where I can uphold truth gently, listen deeply, which is very important, and affirm dignity, not just of the people we're talking about, but the person in front of you. And I think that that's where a lot of the roadblocks come from, where we tend to think when someone is disagreeing with us, that if we can't explain it well, that means that truth isn't true. And I think that that is one of the greatest weapons of great debaters, is that um, you don't get upset when someone is making a better point than you. You may still know that you have truth, but maybe you can adjust, going, maybe that's not the best way to say that. And so when we can speak about hard issues with clarity and compassion, because the compassion is actually the part that is going to change someone's heart. You can give them all the facts in the world and they still might not listen. But if you lead with compassion and you have that clarity, that's sort of like the big superpower that's going to happen here.
Amen. So often we can kind of win the argument, but then lose the person. And I think as Peter
Absolutely.
von Kolvenbach talked about, when the heart is touched by direct experience, the mind may be challenged to change. And so if we can touch people's heart by the way that we treat them and the way that we love them, while presenting kind of logical arguments, I think that's what's going to win the day. And it's what attracted me to your videos, because you're so good at it. And I'm so
Thank
thankful
you.
that you are kind of in the space that you are, and using the gifts and talents that God has blessed you with. So, well, let's talk about abortion a little bit, which are the videos that caught my eye. high in particular, because you do such a great job with them. And let's go directly to those hard cases, because these always kind of come up. And, we had an abortion amendment here in the state of Ohio where overwhelmingly it was passed that, you can get an abortion throughout 9 months. And part of our polling was to see that people just thought abortion was almost kind of like a necessary evil. We need it just in case of rape and incest and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and tackle those. What were your main points in sharing those videos on these topics that you can share with our listeners now as they're thinking about these difficult cases as well?
Well, I think I'm going to condense all of them because I did a few, because sometimes again, if you've ever had a conversation with anyone who is pro-choice, you know that there's a list of things that sort of get talked about to are still valid, but to sort of direct your attention away from the point, which is that, is it a human? Does it have dignity, and does it have rights? And so those are if you have those things set in your head first, then we can know that it's okay if we go on these, what I like to call bunny trails, because they're important to answer for someone to understand. But we need to always come back to that, right? It always needs to be directed completely back to what is it? It's a human, and it has dignity and it has rights. And so, but first and foremost, when it comes to talking about difficult cases, um, I'm always under the impression that the person that I'm speaking with has maybe been through a difficult case. Even if you think that's not true, I will always assume that, because then it helps redirect my heart. Because sometimes when we get in these cases, we can immediately go to, well, that's only less than 1% of abortions. 90% of abortions are elective, which is true. But that doesn't mean we should shy away from these hard discussions. We should say exactly what we want to say in order to uphold the consistent pro-life and human dignity narrative that we know to be true. Because if we can answer the hard questions, well, then the other ones kind of come pretty easily. So I don't think these cases are as difficult as people may think. They're heartbreaking and emotionally raw and traumatic. I think that that's what we need by hard. I don't think they're difficult to answer. I think that they're just hard to speak with people about. So we must never minimize the horror and the pain that comes with familial abuse or sexual violence. Compassion will always come first in these situations. So we need to acknowledge that it demands justice, that we need to fully validate the trauma, and explain that there needs to be unwavering support and care and restoration for the victim. And then once we kind of affirm that, I think that we should continue to understand that there's more trauma to be had once we start bringing abortion into the debate. That, if we're being honest, abortion doesn't fix the trauma that already happened. Because I think sometimes that's sort of a narrative that is brought up. That I've talked to a lot of women that have been the victims of sexual violence and familial abuse, and the ones that have opted for adoption and kept their babies, and ones that have fallen prey to the culture of death. And so none of them have said that their decisions erased what happened to them, because it can't. But only the Lord and proper care can heal those things. So when we talk about affirming that the initial trauma, we can then talk about how they're asking to us to affirm a secondary trauma that is the choice of the mom. The first one wasn't the choice. The second one is. Um, and so there's this amazing book called The Morning After. It's Mouring. So mourning, like crying after. It's Help for the Post-Abortive Syndrome, Abortion Syndrome. It's by Terry L. Selby. It's really short. I don't even know if you can get it in print anymore, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere. But the reason I bring it up is because it draws from real counseling stories and shines a light on the deep hidden trauma that women carry long after their abortions. And so in the book, it kind of talks about this depression, this guilt, this fear, this denial, this spiritual anguish that lingers for years, that causes all kinds of mental health issues, this emotional trauma that we see. And so when we acknowledge that that happens after, we can also note that this isn't something that solves what initially happened. That is something that creates another injustice on top of a primary injustice. And so we can't pretend that it solves that. So once we get to that point, I think that then we can kind of explain, go back again. I'm saying go all the way back then. So affirming and then explaining the truth, and then coming all the way back to, it's still a human. They still have dignity, and they still deserve the dignity that is due to humans. And so that when then we come, obviously, what ends up getting shifted to then, because sometimes when you explain something really well, they just like hop on over to something else, which is okay. We cannot be scared of those things. So then they'll come to the probably most important thing that we've seen in the news and recently, which is the life of the mother. And in these situations, I think that it's always really clear to know a couple of facts. You don't have to know everything, but know a couple of facts and know that the language in the medical industry, it needs to be changed because that's the primary area where people start speaking past each other. Women are concerned that aren't as educated in this area, and there's plenty of them, and there's nothing wrong with that because women are just scared. They see something in the news, oh, women aren't getting care. They're dying. That's scary for someone who isn't in the pro-life movement, doesn't understand pregnancy and all of the procedures and things that come along with it. So again, always under the mindset that you're educating someone, you're not just speaking at them. So since there's all these incorrect languages, we need to know what an ectopic pregnancy is, and that there are situations like a DNC where you have a miscarriage and the baby has already passed away, and that is not an abortion because the baby has already passed away. It is a procedure to keep the mother from going into sepsis or further complications from the child still being inside her. There's ectopic pregnancies, which are not abortions, even though they're labeled as such. And I think that this is a really important topic to talk about because in most cases with an ectopic pregnancy, the child was very much wanted and very much mourned over. And so to create this atmosphere where the women that have received ectopic pregnancy care have opted for an abortion is deeply hurtful to women's mental health who have gone through this. So I think that I really want to point that out to people, and I like to point that out to the people that kind of know what they're talking about in a sense. That if the life of the mother is that the child will never be viable because the child is in the fallopian tube, which is essentially what an ectopic pregnancy is. It's outside of the uterus where it's supposed to be, that the mother will die and the child will die. You are not intentionally killing the child to just kill the child. You are saving the life of the mother. So you're having a procedure where the secondary effect is that the child doesn't live. And that is something that I think a lot of people don't understand, where we don't hear about that with OBGYNs a lot, especially in the typical medical industry. Now
Well,
with
let's
the
go ahead
American.
and hit on that point a little bit
Sure.
more so that our listeners understand. The treatment for an ectopic pregnancy, often you might have the removal of the fallopian tube, for example. You're not
Correct. Yeah.
intentionally or directly killing the child. The result of the action will lead to the death of the child, but
Yeah.
that double effect, that secondary effect, was not the primary action. You're looking to save the life of the mother. Unfortunately, and it could be a case, if a woman has cancer, for example, you can treat the cancer. You don't want the child to die, but that might be the effect of the action. But again, this is morally permissible in a case where you're trying to save life and not intentionally kill it. So I just want to put a pin on that because that's a
Yeah.
really important point that you're bringing up, Marie.
No, and that segues perfectly into the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs and where they actually are they take seriously the oath to do no harm. And so what you just talked about was the principle of double effect, which is that we treat the mother's life-threatening condition with everything we've got, intending to save both lives. That's, I think, the big distinction is that the intention is to save both lives. And that maybe because the medical industry isn't up to date where we need it to be, I think that in the future we're going to see this to be way, way better than it is now, which is always the goal. But the point I think is exactly what you just said, where there is no medical problem where a doctor needs to intentionally kill a child in order for the mother to live. There's early delivery, where then they save the child by doing everything they can possible. I mean, we've seen children survive at 23 weeks now. I mean, which was unimaginable a couple of years ago. And so, as our medical industry advances, we're going to see that just get better and better. We see where, like you said, a woman has cancer and she decides to have it treated, and they're going to do their best to save the child. The second effect of that's why it's called double effect. The intent is not to kill the child; the intent is to save the child. And then this is the best part about that is that when that child, if it happens to pass away, right? One of them is the mom chooses to intentionally kill her own child. There's no palliative care. There's no grieving process. There is no help or support from the woman afterwards. It is simply you did what you needed to do. And the only way to really think about it is that, yeah, it really wasn't a child yet because it was not born. And so the woman goes through all those things where her trauma is suppressed. That's a trauma. that you made the woman decide that she needed to kill her child. The other one is that we did everything possible. Something tragic and horrible happened where we weren't able to save the child too. And then the medical industry does what it's supposed to do, which is give palliative care and counseling for the mom and respectful treatment of the child's remains, which doesn't happen in an abortion. And that's something that I really like to explain to people when I'm talking to them, because I don't think women think about that sometimes when they're like making these really, they're in traumatic decision mode. Something as sad as that the baby has some sort of medical issue and they don't really want to deal with a special needs child, and they don't understand that in one of them you're dealing with, what if the baby passes away after I give birth? Well, then you're able to mourn. That baby is going to be treated with dignity and respect. And in the other situation, your child is whisked away and you don't get to see them again. And that's devastating. It literally makes me want to cry. And so something that I think is the biggest part is that in the pro-life industry, we're all about giving you all the information, all of it, so that you can make your decision as hard as it may be. And then we'll give you support in whatever that decision is, right? With, okay, we choose to treat your cancer. We choose not to treat your cancer, whatever it may be. And in the abortion industry, there's a lot of, or a death culture, as I like to call it, there's a lot of lies. There's a lot of not explaining things. And I think that that's what women really, really need to know, is which one is giving you the full information so that you can actually make a decision, and which one is trying to kind of hide what the truth is to bed down the horror of what is actually happening.
Yeah, it's so frustrating that the left has done such a great job in capturing that to be pro-woman is to be, pro-reproductive choice and stuff. And, I want to go back to an earlier point you were making about the way that you communicate, which I think is really important. Aristotle said that you have to be really knowledgeable, you have to be really passionate, but you have to be attentive to the mode of the receiver, attentive to how people are going to kind of receive the message, which is why we need more Marie Mazzanti's, quite frankly, kind of sharing this message on Instagram, on Twitter or X or whatever it might be. Marie, I'd love to dive deeper into this question, but I think it's probably would be a whole nother show. And that is kind of the root of the issue of abortion, because I want to get at this issue at its core. So maybe we'll have you back on another time to talk about that, because we're running out of time here. But I want to make sure if people want to see your content, you're not just on Instagram, but you're on other social media channels. So how do they find, if they're interested in hearing you? And I don't know if you go around and give talks or speeches. If you have time with 5 kids, that's okay. If not, but how can people kind of see the great work that you're doing?
Well, I do mainly have, I mainly put all my stuff on my Instagram. So it's at Marie Mazzanti, Mazzanti. Ultimately, my Instagram is where people can find me.
Awesome. Marie, thank you so much for your pro-life work and your witness, and living it at home too. I think that's where this movement begins and ends. It's at the home. God bless everybody. Can't wait to talk to you next week on Say Yes to Life.